good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today for this month's Lunch and Learn. I see a lot of names of people that have joined me in the past, so I appreciate you coming back on. I'm super excited today. Here with me, I have a special guest, a Cohen Seglias client, who's going to talk to us about some really cool scientific technology. But today I want to tell you, today's Lunch and Learn, we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts of power of attorneys and living wills. And I'm going to talk to you, most of you know me, but if you don't know me, I am an estate attorney with Cohen Seglias. We are a large construction litigation firm. I help run our estate department. I do things like draft, last will, and testament, these documents like power of attorneys and living wills for clients. When clients pass away, I administer their estates or administer their trust. I help clients through the probate and non-probate process, including filing Pennsylvania or other state-specific death tax returns, federal estate tax returns. And I have been doing this for over a decade now. So saying that makes me feel a little bit old, but all that wisdom comes right to you. And this is part of the reason I do these lunch and learns. Whether you have power of attorney documents, whether or not you have a living will, it's really important, one, to have these documents, two, but to understand how these documents work. So first, I wanted to start off, I'm so lucky that we have a Cohen Seglias client who had a family loved one be a client, have estate planning documents through me, was able to gently transition that family member from making their own decisions to have a family member help them with these kind of documents like a power of attorney and living will. We had drafted a living will, so at the very end of this family member's life, we were able to utilize these documents, and then I was able to administer the estate. And this client right now is working on scientific technology that affects us. And you might say, why are we talking about a science advancement when we're talking about legal paperwork? But I thought it went really nicely with what we're going to talk about today, because we don't always know the moment we're going to be sick. We don't know the moment we're going to be incapacitated and need these kind of legal documents. So I wanted to share some technology with how we're maybe figuring out sickness maybe a little before we feel sick, so that we understand better how to keep ourselves healthy or better able to utilize these documents either for ourselves or for a loved one. So without further ado, and he's going to share his screen, I believe, and I'll share a little bit more with you. But this is Michael Snyder. He is the Stanford Chair of the Department of Genetics and the Director of Center for Genomics and Personalized Medicine, Cohen Seglias client. And he's here to talk to us a little bit about the early detection of COVID-19 with smartwatch technology, but not just COVID-19. We're in the middle of a pandemic right now, but over the centuries, there have been bugs and germs and things that have affected us, and he's here to talk about some technology he's working on at Stanford to share with all of us. So without further ado, Michael Snyder, please take over.
All right, well, thanks, Whitney. Thanks very much for having me here. I am going to tell you about some of our research. I'm at Stanford, and we try to do a lot of research around big data to try and keep people healthy, and that's really our stick. But what I'm going to tell you about today is one very specific aspect of this, which is trying to tell when people are getting sick from a simple smartwatch. So as I'm sure all of you know, I assume you can see my slide just fine, correct? Quiet is good. All right. So basically, here we go. I think you all know we're in the midst of a pandemic. Some people say we're still in the first phase, but some people say we're in the second phase. Either way, the number of cases is skyrocketing. In fact, as of last week, it was running around 76,000 a day. Yesterday had the highest number of deaths in over a month. It was Over 1,100 people died yesterday, or reported deaths yesterday. So this pandemic is skyrocketing. And the way we currently tell if somebody is getting sick is by something called a PCR test. It's actually where they do either a saliva or a nasal swab, and they look for the direct presence of the virus. The problem is it's actually kind of slow. It can take anywhere from 1 to 5 days. 2 to 3 is pretty typical, and it's expensive. It costs $100, $120 a test. It may not sound so bad, but when you're trying to run millions and millions of tests a day, this is just doesn't scale very well. So it turns out that the smartwatches that many of you may even be wearing on the phone, I'm not sure how many of you are, but these are actually powerful detectors. That they're actually measuring your health all the time. They're originally invented to track your heart rate and steps just to follow your fitness, but actually one of our big pushes has been to try and use these things as health devices. And they're actually worn by millions of people. There are over 30 million active Fitbit users. There's tens of millions of Apple and Garmin watch users, and many other devices are out there as well. And what's powerful about them is that their typical watch will be making about 250,000 measurements every day, so it's following you very, very closely. They can measure many, many different things. So as an example, they obviously measure your steps and heart rate, but they'll measure your skin temperature, your blood oxygen, some of them do, and some of them measure something called heart rate variability. They measure a lot of different physiological variables. And these variables will differ from one person to the next. So these are actually my characteristics here. This is my circadian patterns, if you will. This is my sleep pattern. Sleep at night, awake during the day, occasional nap, back to sleep. Heart rate is low at night, high during the day, back down. Skin temperature for most people, high at night, drops the day, come back. So you can actually measure people's individual patterns. So it turns out that they're very, very powerful for detecting when you're ill. So in fact, the way we first got into this is I actually figured out my Lyme disease from a smartwatch. When I first got it, from a smartwatch and a simple what's called a pulse ox, where basically what we found was that initially on an airline flight and then later saw it on the ground, was that my heart rate was elevated, my skin temperature turns out was elevated, all detected by a smartwatch, and also I saw my blood oxygen was different. And then we wrote an algorithm to tell when we could see when you're sick. It's all based on your resting heart rate. See if your resting heart rate goes up. It's kind of complicated, but every single time I've gotten ill, my heart rate will go up. And the powerful part about this, both for the Lyme disease and these other times I got ill, was that it goes up before you're symptomatic in most cases. So before you actually feel the symptoms, your heart rate goes up. So it's an early detector, and it worked on me, and it worked on 3 other people. So with the COVID pandemic, we obviously have started scaling this out as a study. We have two-part study, if you will. We're actually partnering with the leading companies, Fitbit, Garmin, and to some extent working with Apple Watch. And we've enrolled over 5,000. You can enroll too. I'll show you the website if you like. The first part of the study, we're just grabbing people who have already been ill with COVID-19, and we take their data and ideally they tell us when they got ill by symptoms and when they were officially diagnosed by a hospital or a testing clinic. And so using that, we could then start training our algorithms. And this was the very first case, actually. If you look at this individual, see that purple line there where I have my arrow? That's when they first diagnosed as being ill. This is when they were first symptomatic. But look when their resting heart rate went up. It actually went up 9.5 days before they reported being symptomatic. So 9.5 days, they were running around spreading the virus and had no idea because they were pre-symptomatic. And so we've written an algorithm, we'll come to that in a minute, that can actually track this and see when you first jump up in your heart rate. So we've done this now for the first 30-some people, and the median, roughly the average time we see people first see their heart rate go up is about 3 days before they're symptomatic. In some cases, a number of cases, it turns out it is like 9 or 10 days. So we can pick this up quite early, we think. Again, that's because as soon as you get ill from a viral infection, your heart rate goes up. Now we've written what we call an online detection method. So before it was just detecting this. Now what we can do is see whether track you in real time and see if we can see when you first get ill. So this is a different person than when I first showed you. This is actually when they were symptomatic, that little red line there, the purple line. But that blue line is when an alarming signal will go off. This is about 9 months of data. It does go off at other times. We're trying to understand these not as seriously as this time, but this is what we're working out. So here's a second person when theirs went off. Turns out a lot of people have their alarm go off. This is retrospectively, but their alarm will go off over the Christmas holidays, probably because of drinking. Will elevate your heart rate, or traveling, or family stress, any of those. So the point out of all this is that this is now the second part of the study we're about to roll out, where we're now going to tell you when we think you're getting ill because we see your heart rate go up before you know it. We'll send out a yellow alarm signal, and if it stays up, it'll turn into a red alarm. That study will roll out in about 2 weeks. So people with a smartwatch will be able to tell, we think, when they're getting sick. But we're building this way to work for any smartwatch. And then what's so powerful about this is that we have this dashboard built. And if you think about it, this is computationally really challenging. We're trying to follow millions of people at once in real time and follow their heart rate, and then relay back to them as quickly as possible when their heart rate goes up over what's normal for them. And so it really is computationally challenging. We've built a dashboard to be able to do this for millions of people, where it brings in data and can follow all your physiological measurements. And basically, that's what we're up to. And in the long run, we should be able to tell when you're getting ill in general from this kind of thing, from respiratory viruses and bacteria like Lyme. And then we should also be able to share this with your physician, these devices. I think your smartwatch is going to be your smartphone is going to be your most important health device of the future, probably more important than your physician. So we have an amazing team working on this. I won't have time to go through it, but these are the folks. So that's some of what we're up to, again, for detecting illness early. Hopefully, it can help millions of people. That's the goal. So happy to take questions if you have any.
Well, I know I have a question for you, Michael. How did you think about doing this? I mean, you told us all about it. It sounds fascinating. It sounds awesome. It sounds like this is certainly the wave of the future. Knowing things before we're sick allows us, the ability to, and you can tell me, but knowing you're sick before you're sick, what does that help? And I guess I've now just asked you 2 questions. So where'd you come up with this idea? And then why does knowing you're sick before you're sick, why is that helpful?
Oh, yeah, thanks. So the way we came up with it was by accident, how I discovered my Lyme disease, seeing my heart rate go up and things like that. So it really was by us using these as health monitors and then seeing, wow, we could detect, in that case, bacteria with a spirochete for Lyme, and then later respiratory viruses, we realized. So it's almost discovered by accident. Why is that important? Well, imagine this alarm goes off. The last thing you should be doing is going out and mixing with other people, whether it's going to work or going to bars or what have you. If your heart rate's running abnormally high, there's probably something up. So what it would tell you to do is you probably want to stay at home. And if it stays up for a bit, you may even want to go get tested with one of these COVID-19 tests, or possibly go visit a physician, or both. But you definitely want to keep minimally, you don't want to spread the disease, and maximally, you may want to get some additional follow-ups. We hope that the watch will be sensitive enough to tell how severe you're going to get, meaning you might, are you going to wind up in a hospital or not? We don't know that yet, but I imagine if the measurements get pretty severe, we should be able to tell that too. But we're not there yet with that. We're still working on that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, awesome. And I did have another question. This is interesting. What do you think about privacy concerns?
Yeah, I mean, it is true that the information will relay back to us. Now, we process it automatically, and it will go to your smartphone and alert you. My own view on this is pretty minor compared to what you do already. That is, your credit card company knows where you are at all times. That information is shared quite widely, and that's a lot more personal probably than a lot of this. I think people do worry about this information maybe being used against you. That is to say, maybe we'll pick up a heart defect. I would argue that's probably good, so you get treated before you have a heart attack. But people worry that it might raise your insurance and stuff. So I think there should be ways of protecting you against that. This is where laws should kick in so that nobody gets discriminated against if they do have a heart condition. Great question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have another question. and this might be helpful to you because I don't know if you need more volunteers, but I've had a couple of people ask, is there any requirements, or can they simply go onto your site and log on and participate in the study?
Yeah, somewhere on there, and I'll send you the link, and maybe you can send it out to everyone at the end of this. Let's see. Well, I would have to share a screen, or we can put it in the chat. I'll put it in the chat when I sign off, before I sign off. So I'll give you the link, and you can sign up for a study. You probably want to sign up now so we can get your baseline. The alerting system won't be ready for about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, something like that. So we hope in 3 weeks we'll be doing the alerting part I told you. We'll tell you when we think you're getting ill. But sign up now so that we can start pulling in your baseline data, because at the end of the day, the only way to tell if we're getting ill is to see if you see this heart rate jump up. We have to know your baseline in order for that to happen.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, this is so exciting. You're certainly doing this at the right time, in the midst of, a country, a world trying to figure out, how do we move forward with things like COVID-19 or something else. So certainly thank you for all the science that you're doing. And thank you so much for coming and joining us and talking a little bit about what you're up to. I'm just looking to see, I think we don't have any more questions. And I know I only have you for so long. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. Thank you again for being a client of the firm and allowing me to help be part of your family and that transition, whether it's from being well to sick, from being sick to passing away. So thank you so much, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Whitney. I did put the link to the organizers, so maybe that can get shared. Great.
Absolutely. We'll share that. We'll have them do that. Thank you so much. So everyone, this was great. So we got to hear a little bit about scientific technology, something that's going on, and I'm sharing, and let me share my screen here again. I've got, I'm sure he has written more, but here is one of his books. So certainly I'll send the link on to everyone. Maybe you'll be part of this study. Sounds pretty interesting. I'd love to know if I had COVID-19 or was sick before I was sick, so that I didn't spread it to others, and that I was able maybe to curtail the sickness or to get better faster. Here is one of his books, Genomics, Personalized Medicine, and What Everyone Needs to Know. So let's dive a little bit more now into these documents. So we've heard a little bit about some scientific technology. We've heard a little bit about sickness and death, but what are these things? What's the power of attorney? What's the living will? And can I just print a one-page form off online that says, here, my son can make decisions for me? Well, yes, that's the basics of what a power of attorney is, allowing someone to step into your shoes to make financial or medical decisions for you. And today we're going to talk about a financial power of attorney, a medical power of attorney, a business power of attorney, and then we'll get down to talking about living wills. So first we're going to talk about a financial power of attorney. And remember, this is someone else getting to step into your shoes and help make decisions with you and for you. It's not a guardianship where they actually take over making all decisions for you. It's a helping tool. So I've got this funny cartoon here. I told you we should have given the power of attorney to the dog instead of the cat. I don't know who on this call is a dog lover or a cat lover. I only have a dog right now and not a cat, so I'd say the same. Dogs seem like they would be more honest. They would take care of me. The cat would probably leave me out in the dark. But it's funny, but it's true. A power of attorney document is a very powerful document. So we really want to understand what it is for our own sake, if we have a power of attorney. If we're acting as an agent for our mom or dad, what does that power of attorney allow us to do, and what are we not allowed to do, and what does it all mean? So here in Pennsylvania, and I had talked about this in the beginning, that I was going to talk to you about Pennsylvania law. I'll sprinkle in some other states' laws as well. We're a full-service firm. We have locations not only in Pennsylvania, but New Jersey and Delaware and DC and New York, not all the way out to California yet, but we're working on it. Just remember, all of this is very state specific. So if, let's say, you're on this call and you live here in Pennsylvania, but you just moved here from sunny California, it's probably the time to get your documents looked at, because the laws in California may not be the same as the laws here in Pennsylvania. And talking about those laws here in Pennsylvania, we have something called, in abbreviated form, we call the PEP code, but it's Pennsylvania's Estates and Fiduciaries Code. This gives us the legal framework behind these documents. So I've put it for you here. It's in Title 20, and the financial power of attorney is under Chapter 56. So we're going to talk about a little bit involved with the financial power of attorney. Big picture, we should all have a financial power of attorney, because whether or not we know we're sick, we are sick, a loved one is sick or is not sick, it's important. We don't know the day somebody is going to be incapacitated. Sometimes I do, sometimes I have a bus accident and someone has a brain injury, and so one day they're okay and the next day they're incapacitated. But oftentimes I have family loved ones who are okay but are slowly slipping. And when is it the point that they are completely incapacitated? I'm not sure, but I want to make sure that I've got these documents in place, whether for me, in case I get into a bus accident tomorrow and I'm incapacitated, or I live a long time and I'm getting out of it at 97. I want this document in place so someone can continue to take care of my financial affairs for me. A smooth transition from me taking care of my own affairs to someone helping me take care of my affairs. That's really important, especially when someone is sick or when someone has died. We want things to be as easy, as simple, as inexpensive as possible, because there's many other things that you're dealing with when someone is sick or someone has passed away or is dying. So the first thing that we want to talk about is your power of attorney, or the power of attorney that you're going to get, is it a springing power of attorney? Does it spring into action? Or is it a durable power of attorney, meaning it is in existence and works the second you sign it? So in Pennsylvania, a long time ago, before I was practicing law, the default law in Pennsylvania was a power of attorney with a springing power of attorney, which means that something has to happen in order for the document to be utilized. There's some caveat in the document that says, this is a power of attorney and I'm giving my son all these powers, but I have to be incapacitated first. Or, but a doctor has to say this specific thing about me. Or, but this thing has to happen. And it sounded really good and people liked it. But unfortunately what happened was no one could quite tell what the legal or the medical standard was for incapacity. Nobody wanted to sign it off on when somebody becomes incapacitated, whether or not they're in between that green. Banks, other financial institutions didn't want to take these documents. So the law actually fairly recently changed and said, nah, springing power of attorneys. The whole point of a power of attorney is to make a smooth transition. And if we can't use these documents, if nobody can determine when somebody is or isn't incapacitated, how are we going to utilize this document? And so the law changed and said, now we're going to make the default a durable power of attorney. So if, let's say, you're looking at your power of attorney, or you're looking at the power of attorney that's your parents because you're the agent, it should say durable somewhere on it. But if it doesn't say that here in Pennsylvania, it is still durable, which just means as soon as that document is signed, it's in full force and effect and can be used. So what does that mean for, let's say, me? I have capacity, I've signed this power of attorney, and I don't want the person who's my agent to actually be making decisions for me yet because I want to make them on my own. I simply wouldn't give them the power of attorney yet. It's laying in wait so that if and when I become incapacitated, the document can simply be pulled out of the drawer and used. That's what I want to have happen. So the first thing to think about when you have a financial power of attorney is it a springing power of attorney, a durable power of attorney, and which should it be? In each particular situation, it can be different. We had a very recent financial power of attorney update in the legislation just a couple of years ago called Act 95, drastically changed the financial power of attorney world. So if you have a power of attorney document that was drafted before, let's say 2015, you really should have that document updated. It still can be utilized, but the laws have changed so much that it's really important to have a new, crisp document that really accounts for all these changes in the legislation. And one of the major changes in the legislation are something called hot powers. So before this legislation, sort of, you could say, I'd like to give my son my financial power of attorney, and he can do anything that I can do. Well, that's great. He can deposit money in my bank account. He can pay my bills. He can file my tax returns. But what was happening was power of attorney documents, one, were being misused. People were using them and they shouldn't have had those powers. Or institutions were feeling uncomfortable about allowing a power of attorney to do or not do a certain thing if it wasn't listed in the document. So now, with this new law, these 8 things have to be listed in the power of attorney document, or your agent will not be able to do these things. And so let's go through what they are. Not all of them should be in every power of attorney document. Not necessarily all of them should be in yours, but it's important to know what they are and whether or not they should be in your power of attorney document. I certainly have this from time to time where I have a client say, you know, I can print out this form online, it's boilerplate, they all say the same thing. And my answer to that, and hopefully what you guys are gathering from this Lunch and Learn, and all my Lunch and Learns is, unfortunately, it's a bit more complicated than that. Maybe you'll luck out and you'll print out a thing that's got the hot powers that you need and it works the way you want it to, but it is really important to, at the very least, give it a look, make sure it's got these things, or check with your attorney and make sure that your power of attorneys really work the way you want them to, or if you're the agent, you know what you can and you can't do. So those hot powers that have to be listed in a financial power of attorney, and we're going to have another Lunch and Learn sometime regarding trust. Trusts are such a fascinating topic, and there's hundreds of different kinds of trust. But in order to create or amend or revoke or terminate an inter vivos trust, you've got to have this power. So inter vivos, I'm always telling my daughter, she has been taking Latin for a number of years. She says, no one speaks it. What's it matter whether or not I know Latin? And right here is an example. An inter vivos trust means during the lifetime. So it's a trust that's created during your life. There are many other kinds of trusts. There are testamentary trusts, which are created in your estate planning documents. There's trusts that are created in lots of different ways, but this is a trust during your lifetime. And I'm hired quite frequently by clients, banks, institutions, where we have something going on with the trust that we need to change, something that we need to add, something that we need to fix. And if we don't have it in the power of attorney document, let's say the laws change, and now there's a terrible tax ramification to something you've created, but now you have dementia and you're 90. What do we do? Well, if we've got this power in the power of attorney document, your agent can simply reach out to an attorney and make that change. So really important that we might need it in the document. The next hot power that we're going to talk about, I'm just moving my screen around a little bit here. The next hot power that we're going to talk about is making gifts. Making gifts is a really important power, and it makes the power of attorney very, very powerful. One of the things that Act 95 did was it changed a notice requirement. It changed the acknowledgement section. Again, all of those things were meant to tell people this is a very important document. If you've just printed it out from online, it is very, very important. So it's big, bold letters to say you are signing a power of attorney. You're giving someone else control over something that you're doing. Really important. They also changed the execution requirements. This is sort of just I think on my last Lunch and Learn, we talked a little bit about how the execution requirements of estate planning documents have changed. Governor Thomas Wolf has relaxed some restrictions that lawyers have doing in-person meetings. So it's always good to keep abreast of that. But they also, and I'll tell you this, it really is best practice for your estate planning documents to be signed by 2 witnesses and a notary. It can be a little bit actually more complicated than that. Some things can have an interested witness, some things can't. What is an interested witness? We can certainly talk about that at another time. But again, really important whether or not we should have this gifting power. Maybe if we have a bank who is somebody's financial power of attorney, maybe we shouldn't include that gifting power. Why does a bank need that gifting power? But maybe we have a child and we want, I had this conversation with a client last night. They want their parent to still be able to give Christmas presents. Can the agent use a card, write a check to buy a gift for somebody else? I don't know. If in that power of attorney it says that you can make gifts, yeah. If it doesn't say you can make gifts, no. So it's really important, something to think about for your power of attorney document, and then something you're the agent of, whether or not you can make gifts. The next few go together. Looking at making changes to survivorship, so financial accounts, real property, beneficiary designations. I can actually tell you, so Michael Snyder's family who came to me, this was something, and this is something that happens all the time. We've got the wrong beneficiary. We've got the wrong name on the account. We've got a transfer on death to my oldest child, and I've got 6 children. Oh, I didn't know that meant it didn't go to everybody. I had a situation years ago where I had clients come in and they had a beneficiary designation on all their assets of their eldest son. We had talked about they had 3 other children. They didn't realize there was tax ramifications to their eldest child, then transferring it to everyone else, that by law he didn't have to do that. And literally the next day, I got a telephone call, and he was gunned down actually in California. He was the CEO of a pretty large company. He was gunned down by just a random act of violence on the street close to his house. And now there was nobody on their beneficiary of all the retirement accounts. And if they were incapacitated and didn't have a power of attorney document that said we could update beneficiary designations, we wouldn't be able to do that. So, time and time again, these things are really important. Survivorship provisions, beneficiary designations. I think I say this in every lunch and learn that I have with everyone, but so important for you to check how you hold your assets and what your beneficiary designations are. It's really important. We want to be able to transfer as much money as we possibly can to our loved ones, and in doing that, we've got to sort of check those. Delegating authority granted under the power of attorney. I have this happen from time to time. We've got someone who's been acting as a financial power of attorney for 20 years. They're becoming elderly, but the person that the power of attorney of is no longer with it, so they can't update the power of attorney and add another person, but they want their child to now be taking over the power of attorney. We can delegate that authority if we've got that power in our power of attorney. I think that should be in most power of attorneys. If yours doesn't have it, I would update it to have it. These next few, this is important for elder law planning, waiving a right to be a beneficiary of something. If we have somebody who is incapacitated, they're in a care facility, but some distant family member left them money as an inheritance, maybe we don't want them to take it. Maybe we want them to say, I don't want it, because if they don't want it, it goes down to their children. So instead of being taxed twice, it's only taxed once. So there's lots of reasons we may want to either waive a benefit under a retirement plan, or as you see in number 8, disclaim property. Certainly have had that happen many times. I have famous, wealthy clients who end up receiving an inheritance from a family member or a friend, and they have more money than they could ever have their entire lifetime. So you could disclaim that if for some reason they were in a car accident, incapacitated, you could disclaim that asset for them. And then to exercise fiduciary powers that the principal has authority to delegate. That's important. We're going to go back and we're going to talk about that right now. But business powers, what do we do about our business? I represent a lot of business owners who have a business. They may have a business partner. A lot of you know my husband owns a brewery. So we're part of this as well. What if something happens to my husband? He's out there. He has a production facility that's still able to be in existence during this COVID-19 period, but he gets sick. He gets COVID-19 and he's on a ventilator. Who's going to pay his employees? Who's going to sign contracts with new venues? to sell his product. Who's going to take care of those things? Is it going to be, and let's just say he had a partner. Should it be his partner? Should it be his wife? Should it be a friend? So maybe in some circumstances, you should have a totally separate document, a separate power of attorney that says specifically for this business or these particular businesses, I want that power to go to my business partner. Or I want to make sure in the power of attorney document that I have that I can run my business while I'm on a ventilator with COVID-19. My wife can still pay payroll, can still do these things for my business. So my business is still up and running when I come out of that ventilator and I'm okay. So really important to either have those business powers in your power of attorney or to have a separate document if we want to name different people. And that brings us to the last thing we're going to talk about regarding financial power of attorneys, which is who should we pick as our agent? You know, we made a joke about should have picked the dog, not the cat, but this is a huge issue that we've got to deal with, which is who should it be? Should it be a bank or an institution? They're going to do everything right. They've got a fiduciary responsibility. They have a whole department that knows what they're doing in order to take care of these things. But they're going to charge money for it, and they don't know you individually. Should it be a family member? Should it be one of your children? Should it be both of your children? Should it be a number of your children? The benefits of having everybody on board is everybody gets to help make those decisions. That can also, be the bad side. Too many cooks in the kitchen. Will we wind up in court anyway with people fighting about which financial decision should or should not have been made? Should we have it be, again, a company? There's services out there that you can pay in order to be, to have them as an agent, that particular person. But, lots of things to think about here. Should I have it be my eldest child? Should I have it be my youngest child? Should I have it be someone that I know and love and trust that knows finances? Remember, we're talking about a financial power of attorney right now. So somebody who can help take care of your affairs so that when you are either not incapacitated anymore or back to being able to take care of your own affairs, all of your assets are there, your business is doing well. Or if then it's a slow decline to you passing away, as much of your assets are preserved for your family members and your loved ones. So does anyone have any questions about financial power of attorneys? I should have said this in the beginning. A lot of you have, in this COVID-19 world, we're doing everything now by webcams and GoToMeetings and Zooms. So everyone knows they can certainly ask questions in the question box or chat. Sometimes I can't chew gum and walk at the same time, so I won't always see them. But if you have a question, I will certainly give it a look. If it's a good question for the group, I'll put it out there. If I don't get to it, then certainly feel free to email, call me, text me, any question that you ever have. I'm certainly happy to answer. But I do get a list of the questions at the end, so I'll reach back out to you as well. And I'm just looking over here. It looks like we had, a lot of questions when we had Michael, the interesting scientist who is endeavoring to tell us when we're sick before we're sick. I feel like I'm at the beginning of a sci-fi thriller. But let's keep going. We're going to talk about medical power of attorney. So medical power of attorney, the same thing. We're going to talk about the same considerations. Now we've got a medical power of attorney. We're not worried about our finances, but who's going to make my medical decisions? Who's going to decide what course of treatment I'm going to receive? Who's that going to be? Who's that agent going to be? Is it going to be the same person as the financial power of attorney? Is it going to be somebody different? And do I want to have a springing power of attorney or a durable power of attorney? Remember, springing means something has to happen in order for the document to be able to utilize. Durable means it can be used right away. I'll tell you a little story about guardianship. So if your loved one doesn't have a power of attorney document and we need to make financial or medical decisions, we might have to get a guardianship. I certainly do them from time to time as well. What I will say about a guardianship is it costs tens of thousands of dollars to get a guardianship appointment. We have to go through the court system. We have to go to hearings. We have to have the state be involved in our family members' lives to make a determination on who should be guardian. We want to make sure in these documents we put who we want to be that guardian But we've got these documents in place so that we don't have to do that. That's the whole reason we draft power of attorney documents, so that somebody can step into your shoes and make decisions for you, that smooth transition, and it's somebody that you want. A story that I can tell you, I was in court not that long ago. There was a client, 37 years old, and he was out in the neighborhood. There were some kids messing around on a skateboard. He said, you know what, it's been a long time since I've been on a skateboard. Let me show you kids some tricks. He hopped on the skateboard, did a couple tricks, but at the end of the last trick, he fell directly on his head. He is severely brain damaged. I'm not sure whether or not he will come out of it. I don't know the medical part of that story, at least now, but he was severely incapacitated immediately. He did not have a power of attorney document, someone to make financial and medical decisions for him. He had a girlfriend that he was living with, and he had a mother who loved him quite a bit. The mother and the girlfriend did not get along and did not see eye to eye on the course of treatment he should be receiving. So everybody winds up in court, and you've got a girlfriend screaming how horrible the mother is, and you've got a mother saying how horrible the girlfriend is. And in the end, the state stepped in, and the state actually became guardian of this man to make some really, really important and not so clear-cut answers to the best form of treatment he should be receiving. And so that story is sort of there to say, you know, sometimes people say, if I'm out of it, what do I care? Who cares who does anything? Or if I pass away, who cares about these documents? What do I care? Well, I care. If I'm out in the neighborhood and I fall and have brain damage, I want the right people in place to make the right decisions for me, and I want to choose who that is. I don't want that decision to be made by a judge, by an attorney, by our state government. I want that decision to come from me. So that's really important to understand, whether it's a financial power of attorney or medical power of attorney. You're setting things up so that you get to make those decisions, so that when you can't make those decisions, we have the people in place that can help. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about here is institutions. This is important. When do you hand out this document? When do you give it to everybody? And the answer is, you know, there's never an easy answer to anything in the legal world. It's always, it depends. But the answer is, it does depend. If I have cancer, I have stage 4 breast cancer, and I am dying, each institution that I'm working with should have a copy of my medical power of attorney and living will. I'm often reached out to by family members, by clients, before they enter some form of long-term care facility, nursing home. They oftentimes require these documents to be on file. So in that case, you would give them. But if you're young and you're healthy like me, maybe I just keep them and wait. I tell my family members that I've got these documents. I tell the agent where the documents are. I let them know the law firm that I've executed these documents at, so that if something were to happen to me, they can get to those documents that easily. But my doctor doesn't need to have a copy of it yet. One of the reasons is the person may change over time. Right now, I have family members that aren't my children listed in my document. I have an 8-year-old son who's not quite ready to make financial decisions for me, but someday he may be able to do that. So I'm going to update this document from time to time. I will say that in other states, there can be things called depositories where you actually put your documents and they can be found at this depository. Pennsylvania doesn't have that unless you're using a financial power of attorney to do some kind of real estate transaction, and then it will be on file with the government, but most of the times not. So now we've talked, we started with having this special speaker to tell us a little bit about technology in this world of sickness. We're talking about sickness a little bit, talking about power of attorney documents, a financial power of attorney, a medical power of attorney. But now we're going to move into a living will. So a living will is a statutory construct under the PEF code. There's actually a statutory form under Chapter 54 that is a living will. Most practitioners use that, and then they change it up and add things or delete things. And this is a document that tells your medical power of attorney what you do or you don't want at the very end stages of your life. including things like organ donation. So this is really important. Sometimes people say, well, why don't I just have it attached to the medical power of attorney? I just have a medical power of attorney. I don't need this living will too. I'd say one, if you give that medical power of attorney out, I still hold that living will back. That's the document that says I don't need treatment anymore. I always want to receive treatment until the time that I shouldn't be receiving treatment anymore. So I like that document separated so I can give one and I don't have to give the other. But it also is really important to give your medical power of attorney some information. So if I'm my dad's medical power of attorney, I want to know if he gets COVID-19, he's on a ventilator, let's just say he's lost oxygen for so many minutes that he is brain damaged. There's no hope of recovery, but they're keeping him alive. And technology can keep you alive. We're learning so much about technology, and I'm actually going to tell you a little bit more because we've had even more updates in the law regarding scientific technology and our bodies. But let's say he is brain damaged and he's never coming out of it. I want to know, acting as his medical power of attorney, Dad, what do you or don't you want at this very end stage of your life? I want you to tell me. I want this to be your decision. So ahead of time, you're telling your medical power of attorney, don't worry. You don't have to make that decision. I've already made that decision for you. And I can tell you, over the hundreds, if not thousands of estate administrations I've done in the more than decade that I have been practicing in the estate world, having that living will can really help during the grief process after you lose someone. So even if you're not doing it for yourself, it can be doing it for your loved one. And again, important to talk about things like, what would I want at the end? And do I want to donate my organs? Or do I not want to donate my organs? And that leads me into a story that I'm going to tell you about. And before I show the slide, I should have said, if you're eating something, put it down. This is definitely a little bit gruesome of a picture. But I want to talk to you about this because this affects, we've had in 20 years, the Anatomical Gift Act is the most recent piece of legislation, the first piece of legislation in 20 years to affect sort of the medical power of attorney living will world. And so what does it have to do with this girl, Katie, and what looks like a maimed face? Well, Katie, when she was 18 years old in 2013, she actually it was 2013. She was 18 years old. She was dating a boy that she just thought was the world. She thought they were going to get married. She loved him more than life itself. One day they met, and she said, he said, I don't love you anymore, and I'm now dating another girl. So what Katie did was, very upset, went home, found her dad's shotgun, locked herself in their family bathroom, and blew what she thought was going to be her brains out. Couldn't live anymore without this man. And fortunately, she actually did not hit her brain. The bullet actually just grazed her brain, so she actually doesn't have any brain damage. But how the bullet went in and out of her body maimed her face. So we can see that in the second picture of 2015. This is with an awful lot of surgeries already. She had a face that doesn't work right, can't breathe, can't eat, can't see. So what are we going to do? Katie's alive. Inside, she's completely fine. And she has this covering her face that's not allowing her out into society and not allowing her some of the basic functions that you and I forget. So we can breathe out of our nose, and we can talk out of our mouth, and we can eat food with a tongue. So Katie actually became, less than 24 months ago, the youngest face transplant participant. She was 21 years old at the time. Face transplanting has only come into existence in the last few years, just like we were talking to Dr. Michael Snyder about science and technology. The technology that we have, the things that we can do are ever increasing. And now we have something called a face transplant. So we've got these vascularized composite allografts. And so what VCAs means is your hands, your feet, and your face. We can now donate those parts of our body. And so we've updated the law in order to account for it. but do you want to donate your face? Do you want to donate your hands or feet or not? And so now that needs to be incorporated in the living will. Right now, there's about 7,000 people on an organ donor wait list. So there's a lot of people out there, but there's a lot of reasons you may or may not want someone to have particular parts of your body, like things like vascularized composites. So this is the most recent Pennsylvania legislation called the Anatomical Gifts Act. It's where we now see these vascularized composite allografts, these VCAs. And if you haven't accounted for them in your living will and your healthcare directives, now's the time to do that. Without doing that, you're not able to donate those particular types of parts of your body. So every once in a while, you do have to look back at these documents. And now I've got to go back to my dad and say, you know, I'm your medical power of attorney. You know, you've given me these end-of-life decisions, and I know it, but are you okay with donating your face if it's possible? I know the person who passed away, in order for Katie to have a new face, she was a young girl. She had a drug problem. She went to treatment. She was doing really well back at home. You know, she got a call from a friend. She went to a party, and she tried it just one more time. And unfortunately, she OD'd. And so that led to Katie having this new face. She's certainly not out of the woods, but you can see, I'll go back to that picture, how much more functionality she has with this new face. And this is important. We're having a lot of discussions on, you know, government and government control and whether a government's good or not good. But all the face transplants so far in the United States have been actually funded by our military in order to help victims of bombings, blast bombs to our soldiers and how to fix them. So a little bit interesting, but really important for us to understand, why should we have these things? What is a vascularized composite allograft? Do I have that in my living will? Have I talked to my husband about that? Have I talked to my wife about that? Have I talked to my friends about that? What is it that I do or I don't want at those very end stages of my life? So we're down to the end of this Lunch and Learn, and I couldn't do a Lunch and Learn without having some kind of trivia question where someone can win a $50 gift card. I should have said it, and maybe I did say it in the beginning, but it's normally, you know, my little carrot for you so that you do stay with me and you listen at least just a little bit. I hope you all got a little bit of something, learned a little bit about financial power of attorneys, medical power of attorneys, living wills. I hope, you know, getting to hear that speaker was fantastic, to learn a little bit about what Stanford Medical School, what research labs are doing to figure out what's going on in this world with COVID-19 and other things. So without further ado, I'm going to give you my last trivia question, and then I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions for me. So think if you have any questions and ask. If you don't think of them now, certainly ask me later. And how this is going to work is I'm going to put the next slide on. We've got a question there. The first to type the answer into the box is going to win a $50 gift card. I've got your information, so I'll reach out to you thereafter. So here we go. Trivia question. What age was the youngest face transplant in the United States? Looks like we've got a lot of people typing. Let me see if I can look here in the either chat or the question box. You can put it in either spot. Does anyone know when the youngest face transplant? We just talked about Katie. How old was Katie when she got her face transplanted? Like I've got someone raising their hand. It doesn't look like I see anything, so I wonder if anyone's having a tough time posting. So let's see if I'm maybe just not looking in the right space. I know a lot of you know this answer. Great, it looks like we've got someone. Yes, the youngest face transplant here in the United States was Katie, and she was 21 years old. When she tried to blow her brains out, she was only 18, but she had her face transplanted when she was 21 years old. So I'm going to ask now if anyone has any follow-up questions for me regarding these legal documents, these estate documents, a power of attorney for financial decisions, a medical power of attorney for medical decisions, a living will, what's a vascularized composite allograft, what's going on with our smartphones and our technology to help detect sickness before we're sick, so that we know those answers. But hopefully we've got these documents in place before something like that were to happen. Oh yeah, it looks like I see those questions regarding privacy. That is such a scary thing to think about, that our credit card companies know where we are at each moment, that we might have smart technology that can tell us whether or not we're getting sick, and who can have that information, all of that regarding like HIPAA, privacy rules, all very, very interesting. And let's just see, oh, I see there's a lot of questions here. Well, I only have a few minutes left, so let me see if I can get down to some people are asking more questions. I know he was so dynamic, so many questions about, and he is not on anymore. I don't think so. I think he not only does he teach, but he runs a lab, and he also gives national lectures on these things. But if you have any additional questions, certainly let me know. I appreciate all my clients. I appreciate my family members, my friends, everybody who's here on this Lunch and Learn. Join me again next month where we talk about something else. Again, I always try to have a trivia question or some game or some speaker, so we've got something to sort of keep us engaged in learning a little bit more about this area of the law. Again, thanks so much, and everybody have a great rest of your day. Now that we know a little bit more about this technology, let's give our little smartphones a look and finish the rest of our days. Bye, everyone. Be well. Be safe.